Okay, so few things that we need to know. First thing, that we are supposed to make two functions when we look at that question. First function is distance. The second function is slope. Now, few things to know. First thing to know is essentially what we need to do is we need to take an input. Input can be taken through scanner, or input can be taken through an array. So I have already shown you scanner before, how to use scanner. Now I'll show you how to do array. So what we can do is, what we can have an int array and then put values in there. Now assuming you have -1, 1, in this case you have the value of say x1 will be -1, 1, 2, say 3, just an example. Then you can have an array of y1 which will be 2, 3, 5, 7. You can have an int array of x2, you can have an int array of y2, and so on, and you can use it. So that's one way of doing it. The good part about doing something like this is you no need to resupply input. So if you are trying to check in the exam, this is actually much faster than actually trying to use scanner where you'll have to input every time. Now, so that said, there are a few other things that we will also see. We will also see how to do the display of the results, and also to write the functions. Okay, two things. Okay, now let us write the code. So how do we write the code? We write the code using Eclipse. And how do we do that? So let's look at Eclipse actually. So I'm going to create a new program which is called, I would say Java project. So I'm going to call it distance and slope. Create it. So I create a program which is called distance and slope. I will go in and create a new class which I will call slope. Look. Now, if we look at this, there are few things to look at. The first thing to look at is essentially we need 4 integer values. If you look at it, we need integer x1, which is equal to, so we can supply that. We also need int array y1, which we can supply in this. We also need int x2, which we can also supply in here, and we need int y2. So few things though. Int x1 is essentially, we'll take just the first 4 values just to show you how to use it. So the first 4 values of this could be written like this, essentially 1, 3, 5, 7. The next for y1 could be 5, 6, 7, 8. And see, this actually is basically 4 elements from the set. Okay, then you can also have the other ones. So assuming you wanted 5 values for each of them, then you can just add one more in the index for each one of them and then move on. So these are the inputs that we are going to take. Now this thing, the good part about this is these are 4 elements, the first 4 elements of the set. Now the next thing we need to do is to have two functions. So you say public static double distance, and then you say int x1, int y1, int x2, int y2. Now a few things here. Now this needs to return a double, so we'll say double distance value that you want to return is initially 0. We can say distance. We can call it something else also if you want to. So let's call it dist. Just to so that no confusion. So this is basically square. So it'll say math square root of math power x2 minus x1. So we can say, so we need power, so this will say x2 minus x1 to the power of 2 plus, we can also do the other one, which essentially is y2 minus y1 square. Then we close the bracket. So this is basically, let's just make sure this works. So how does this work? So you see this bracket is closing that bracket. We don't need this guy. Now we see that's the formula, and then we return the distance. So this is how we calculate distance. Similarly, let's calculate slope. How does slope actually work? So what we do is, let's copy this, just Control C, Control V. So we do slope, same signature. Now in this case, we have to be a little careful because what happens is you will do say double slope, let's call it SL, is equal to 0.0. Now slope is equal to y2 minus y1 by x2 minus x1. Now what we have to do is we have to do, because it's a double, we'll just call something as delta x, which will be x2 minus x1, and then we can have double delta y, which is equal to y2 minus y1, which is change of x and change of y. And now we can say slope is equal to delta y by delta x. Now the good part about this is that this is a double and this is a double, so the answer will be a double. It won't get approximated. But if we just do the calculation directly, it will get approximated. 2, like a 3.2 will become 3.2. Now that's it. So we can return S1. So this returns the slope of this. So let's see. Why is it not happy? There you go. So that makes two functions that we need to write. Now, how do we display and test them? Now, a few things that you need to know in order. So I want to run all those 4 examples in order to be able to see it. So how do I do? So I'm going to calculate. I'm going to say my distance and slope is equal to S0. Now, what we can do is essentially, if I want to calculate just for the first value, I can do, so in an array, so few things that you need to know. In an array, so let's do that. So so few things we need to know. So let's add another page. Okay, so what happens is now in an array, if I want to access a particular variable, so assuming I wanted to access x1, so I can do x1 0 will give me the first value in the array x1. I can do y1 0. I can do x2 0. I can do y2 0. So this basically gives me the first value of the array. Now if you go back and you see, this is the first value of the array. So this actually gives me this set of numbers. So assuming I wanted to do distance of the first set of errors, so I could write distance x1 0, comma y1 0, x2 0, y2 0. Okay, so I can do that. This will basically take the first values from each of those and calculate the distance for those first values. Now that said, let's come back and let's see if we can do slightly better. Okay, so now now I want to go through all of them. So I do for int I equal to 0 to I less than, in this case it has to be, say, let's say x1 length. Okay, and then we can do I plus plus. So what that actually means is that if I wanted to so I want to just see, so I will do x1 I comma plus y1 I plus next to I plus y2 I. So what this is doing is I just need to put a gap in there. So I'll just put a gap. So that actually puts a gap. So let's play with this. So let's see what this is going to do. So I'm going to do this. So it's going to proceed. Good job. Now, if you look at the console window, what does it show me? It says x cannot resolve variable. Let's see. Oh, there you go. This is to x1. Basically, this tells you the size of this guy. So assuming I wanted to do 4, it's actually reading from there and doing 4. Okay, so now what you're seeing is you're seeing all the 4 values that you would see in your table in your question. Okay, so if you go back and look at the question, now the issue is that if I needed to have some space in there, I can use a tab command. So what I can do is I can do /t, and it allows me to put spaces in there. See, this is how the table value is arranged. Now, a few other things. Now, all these values are being repeated. Now, assuming I just wanted to put the header in here. So I want to say, okay, I want to say x1, the first value, basically on top. Then I say y1. Then I want to say x2, basically so that there is a heading there, and y2, because this is only repeated once, the rest of the stuff is repeated multiple times. That's when the loop. So let's see what it looks like. There you go. Now I want to show distance, so I'm going to say same thing plus, but I'm going to say distance. So I want to say distance. So I'm going to say distance plus slope. Okay, so let's see if it works. There you go. So it says distance and slope, but there are no values here. So we need to add those. How do we calculate distance? So we need a /t so that there is a tab. So this is explained at the end of chapter 4. If you want to see what tab does, tab is basically giving you spaces. If I want to calculate distance, I can say distance, and now I need to feed it the parameters. So I'm going to feed in x1 I, comma y1 I, comma x2 I, comma y2 I. What does that mean? And I'm going to, okay, so let's see. So basically I am passing to this function these values. So let me just make it a little easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, let's calculate distance, which we have, which is basically, I'll pick this up, put it there, so it's easy to understand. There you go. And I'm going to pass that variable here. Okay. So that this value can be calculated using the i's, and then it is plopped in here. So let's look at it. Okay, so there you go. Now so few things though. And then let's see if I can do the slope also. So okay, I'll just copy this over because it's easier. So the parameters are the same, the values are the same. It's called slope here. So what happens is this slope function, which is basically calling this guy, passes x1, y1, x2, y2 from this, and then it feeds it through all of them. If you look at that, now you see you get all the, so I'm just going to pass slope. I'm going to say plus, give me tangent, a stab, and then put the slope in there. So let's see. Okay, now the problem is that this has got so many digits. Now we want to truncate those digits. So the easiest way to truncate those digits is to create distance and slope, make it into a string, and then truncate it. So what we can do is we can actually, make two more variables, which are basically string. So I'm calling s distance, okay, which I call s distance, and then we can manipulate that string to give you. So, and then we're going to call s slope, which basically means string representation of slope, okay. And then what we can say is, we've calculated both those values here, correct? So we've calculated both those values here. Now what we want to do is, let's say, so there is a command which is called format. So what we get, so good to remember that. So what this does is, this is also, so I can say s distance, take the string, because this is a string, I will pass distance to it, and it says I want 4 decimal points. I can also do 2, but let's do 4 first so that you have an idea. So this actually takes all, it should take all distance values and format that. Okay, now why is it not doing? So let's see. So this distance comes in here, this distance comes in here. DIS. Ah. So this is saying this is not being used. So let's see. Now let's see if it's happy. Can do this string. Can take this out from here. It's like it's happy. And then we just need to pass the s distance here. Okay, so that's the error. So we have the two variables. Okay, So we use distance and we pass it here. So let's see if it actually works. So there you go. So I want 4. Now I want to do the same thing with slope. So what I can do is I can say my string, formatted string slope will equal to, I'll take the slope in there and then have 4 decimal points. Then it will do, why is it not working? Because this is, I'm not passing the string. Now you can see this whole thing is actually a string. So it's actually adding. So there you go. Now in the question, there are 2 decimal points. So what we can do is we can do 2f basically, which tells you there are 2 decimal points. So this is the answer that you've been looking for. So now assuming I wanted just 1 decimal point, so I could do 1, and so you have to look at end of chapter 4, which actually talks about printf, and it talks about t/t basically is giving you this spacing. So few things. Now, few things that you need to know. Document your code, write the functions. First step, write functions, create program, write functions. Second step, run the function to make sure the results are okay. Third step, make sure you document the code properly. Fourth step, answer all the questions that are left. So make sure you make the function properly. That's it. These are the few things that you need to know. And there we go.